Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I get to work on one of my absolute favorite reels of all time. Well, actually, it's the cousin of one of my favorite reels of all time. This one is the Daiwa Sealine 350. This is the second generation of the reel. The first generation of the reel was the Daiwa 50H. And that 50H is my all-time favorite for deep sea fishing, for trolling and the like. Now the 3 in this indication, I believe, is meant to be a 3.0 size reel, but we will see. The 50H is a brilliant reel, and it's one of those reels that you just, once you find it and once you fish with it, well, you have a hard time forgetting it and a hard time leaving it home when you go out on the water. Well, we're going to show you how this reel is made. You'll see the quality of the components inside of it. You'll see what makes it special to me, and you'll see how to service it and keep it fishing for a long time to come. We're going to start by removing the exterior parts. The wrench that you might have for your Penn fishing reel will fit the handle screw for the Daiwa reel, and it's mounted the same way with a tie-down screw there to hold it in place. While we're doing this, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe to my channel, please use the notification button to let you know when I'm posting a video. I try to post every day. I also have been posting some YouTube shorts of late that you may find interesting, and subscriptions will let you know when all of that is happening. Well, this one hasn't been serviced in a while, but that's kind of an indication to how well made this reel is. Even though it hasn't been serviced, it's still a very strong reel that kind of can live on less greases and oils and the like, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be servicing it. You can see that we do have a buildup of salt around the pillar on that handle, and that's an indication that, well, it hasn't been flushed out and it hasn't been serviced. We're going to take some penetrating oil and give that a squirt and spin it around, and that should free that up. There's also a little lubrication port here. If you have a little oiler, just kind of go ahead in there and fill that with oil and give that a spin. That'll help it as well. When I take those pieces and parts off, I put them into a parts tray. That parts tray is invaluable to me. All of the pieces and parts that I take off go in there, so when it's time to reinstall, I know where to find them. All right, we have a tension spring here that the last time this reel was serviced was put in upside down. That's okay, it'll work nonetheless. Looks like it got a little jammed up in here, so we're just gonna have to take our time to remove that piece. There we go. And then we can put that off to the side here. If there's any faults with this reel, it's this darn star adjuster. It's got a long collar on it, and every now and then those collars break off, and sometimes these tines break off. This reel is a solid aluminum bodied reel. It's anodized, is that the right word? I have trouble saying it, but I know what I mean. Aluminum, and inside here you just saw that I took 2 tension washers off. That allows us to get to the side plate screws. There are 4 of those. We'll remove those now. You want to remove this side plate so that you can service the gear side as well as go inside to service the non-gear side of this. This reel looks like it's equipped with about 30 or 35 or maybe 40 pound monofilament. This is good for trolling and deep drop fishing. It's not unusual to use a reel like this in 150 or 200 feet of water. It does have a relatively high speed retrieve, particularly for the time, and your arm won't get as tired with this as it may with some. So again, it's just one of my favorites. The quality of the chrome plating on the side plates has made it last a very long time. The materials inside are very strong from a spring standpoint, and the only thing that I've found with these reels that is the cause for them winding up on the shelves and as parts reels is actually a slider on this jack release over here. Let's take this off now, and then you can see we've got some very old greases sitting in there, another indication that the reel hasn't been serviced in a while. We can just remove the spool now. There's another problem here with this line, you can see that it's holding its memory, which means that this line has been on the reel longer than it should. Just going to bring some of this back on. I'm going to tell Thomas to change the line over, but for now I'm just going to rewrap. And I'm going to grab a rubber band just to hold it all in place. If you don't do that, the problem that you're going to have is when you go to put the spool back through the case, that line is going to trap, and then you're going to have to fish it out. So we'll just kind of put it in there like that. Put that into my tray for now. I wanted to get to the back. For the time this reel was so far ahead of itself, we have a bearing in the back here and a bearing in the case. And boy, does it just make for smooth operation on this reel. That's all you have to do. This is clean. It doesn't hurt to grab a scrubby pad and some rod and reel cleaner. Put a little shot on there, and while you got the case open, go ahead and clean it up. Because once you put the spool back on, you don't have access to this. Wipe it down. We'll do that on the back side here, but this reel overall is in nice condition. And then we'll show you what's going on the other side, where my complaint is in terms of the pieces that break. And most of the time you're going to find these, they'll be in the used market. Now, one of the things you'll find is that the notification sticker on here, the one that tells you the spool capacities and the weight of the lines, that's missing. And most of the time this little patch here, this badge, is missing as well. Don't let that fool you. There's enough telltale marks on what this reel is to kind of get you through that. This is the basic 50H. Now, of course, this is the 350H, but this is the basic gearing in the 50H. And what we're going to do is remove these 4 bridge screws. That's going to enable us to pull out the bridge and service the rest of the reel. Well, there's 4 of these. When you do these, you want to take these and put them on your desk and make sure that you identify which screws go where. If I remember, all of these screws are the same screws. They're partially threaded screws, but sometimes, like with the pen reels, you'll find that it's a different screw on the bottoms, and if you do, you want to notice that and make sure that they go back there. Yeah, these 4 are all the same. I'm using a Phillips head for this, but you could use a flat-bladed screwdriver here as well. Sometimes on this reel you have a lock nut on the one that controls the anti-reverse dog. I don't see that lock nut here. That doesn't mean that it was ever there to begin with. Okay, I'm going to take off this anti-reverse dog spring, the anti-reverse dog. We're going to put those into the parts tray so I don't lose those. We're going to pick up the 4 bridge screws and put those into my parts tray. I'm going to remove the 2 springs for the yoke, and that'll show you the inside of this now. Here's our second ball bearing back here. We have a little bit of that old grease in here. We have a lot of it on the side of the case here, so let's get rid of that. And that essentially is the cleaning on this side. Well, I mentioned the weak spot. This is the weak spot right here, right where you have that little stud. This free spool release jack, which is going to ride here, oftentimes starts rubbing up and down on this and will eventually wear that away. And there's no solution for that. Now, don't think that it's going to happen to you in a basic use mode. That's I've seen that when it's been on charter boats that are using these reels 250 days a year, and probably 100 drops or 120 or 50 drops every trip. So it's definitely high use. It's not an issue there with you going out as a weekend fisherman or anything else for that matter that's going to cause that to wear down. But that is the weak point on this reel. All right, I've oiled the bearing, I've oiled the free spool release. This is another area where these reels are prone to developing problems. Salt water comes in behind the free spool lever. It's kind of a narrow opening where the eccentric jack comes through to join the screw. That clogs with salt, and this becomes, well, rather difficult to operate. Let's go on to our main gear then. Pull the stack up here. You have a collar. You have a very thick washer, followed by your drag stack and main gear, and you can see the quality of construction in this main gear. Well, I'm going to work these off. Probably need little needle nose pliers here for this. And these have kind of a, I always wondered what this was. I think it's a cork, kind of a drag washer. But even when you look at them new, they kind of seem more like a cork. It may be leather, but I have the new ones, and they kind of look the same. I'll see if I can grab that in a moment after I finish my train of thought here. We want to push the pin through that's holding the gear shaft on. And I use a little awl to do that. That pin is what holds the gear shaft on. Put that in my parts tray. Then you can remove the gear shaft. You want to do that because you want to clean all of the dirt and grease and grime underneath. I'm going to use a penetrating oil to do that. And I like to use the least abrasive method that I can to remove this stuff. So if I can clean that up with a paper towel, I'm going to do that as my first choice. I'm also going to take a cotton swab and I'm going to run it through the channel inside the gear just to push all that old grease out of there. And we'll go ahead and we'll just kind of mop up around the back end of this as well. That's what's required for the gear shaft service or gear sleeve service. We'll go ahead and put the grease back on. Put the gear sleeve back on. Grab the pin that we knocked out. Push that back in. Sometimes you might need a little tap. I keep a non-marring plastic hammer. I think it's a Stanley hammer. It is a Stanley hammer. It's a Stanley 593A. Well, at least that's the tip. It's been in my toolbox a very long time, and I use it for that so that I don't injure it at all. All right, I'm going to see if we can get this last one out. We may not be able to get this last drag washer out. Oh, we did. Okay. All right, you want to clean the inside channel of this. Do it the same way. You just want to make sure that all the dirt and debris and the like is out of there. You're not going to be able to do anything with the tarnish. Don't worry about that. And then we have to clean the main gear. So there's a bunch of old grease here. And we want to just take our best attempt to clean it. I'm going to use a hard bristle brush to do that. This is just a Home Depot. It was a 3-in-1 pack. It came with a steel wire brush, a brass brush, and a hard bristle brush. You don't need to run out and get that. If you don't have one of those and you're just doing the single reel repair, you can use a toothbrush. It'll work just fine. All right, I'm going to take grease now that I did that. And again, you can just see it's a nice quality. I believe it is a brass gear, and it is a very high quality one. And with all of the 50Hs that I've worked on, I used to service the charter boat fleets, 50Hs. I don't think I've ever replaced the main gear. As I said, the main failure point that I noted was always that darn slide collar for the free spool release jack. All right, I'm just going to grab what I think might be my box of Daiwa parts. I'm not sure if I have the drag washers in this one. I don't. I'm going to shut the camera off and go get the other box. Okay, well, I went and got a new one, and I'm looking, there's flex in here. I'm wondering if this isn't there's some kind of asbestos compound in there. Well, I got the new one just because they don't appear to be worn, but I'm just going to use that as a compare. Well, thicknesses are all the same, so I don't have to worry about replacing these. When compared to new, they're identical. All right, these are hard washers. I don't grease these. I leave them to be, and I don't see any advantage on a hard washer. It's not going to absorb the greases, so it makes little or no difference to put the grease on. This is a 6-drag system. We have 2 keyed washers. Those keyed washers are top and bottom. You have an eared washer, that's the middle. If you tried to put this one in right now, it wouldn't hold. The slot is not deep enough in the main gear to do that. You'd have a problem. All right, the keyed washer goes first and last, so let's put one of those in. Move that down. Put the second one in now. Now the keyed washer goes in. That's the middle washer. If you tried to put that on top, it wouldn't grab the slot. So it really has to be middle only. Making sure that they're clean. You don't want any debris or pitting or anything like that going on with these washers. Put the last one on, and then we have a very thick washer next. And then we have the spacer for the reel. With that on, what we need to do then is to install our base of the reel. We're going to do that by putting in the 2 yoke springs. We're going to go to our parts tray for that. There's only a little cavity here. It's not like a pen one. It's just like the first turn of that. So you have to be very careful how you do that. Inspect the teeth on your pinion gear. This one's clean. Grease that pinion gear. I'm using Pen Precision Reel Grease here for that. The shoulders of the yoke get greased. Again, make sure that they're clean. Both sides. We can put the yoke onto the pinion gear. We want to center the pinion gear with the slot facing you. It's always a little bit of a balancing act. Push down on the pinion gear and go ahead and grab that free spool release jack, and that's going to be how this is all going to set, just like that. I'm going to hold my place here now, and I'm going to carry this whole assembly in. Notice we don't have the spring or the anti-reverse dog on yet. We're going to bring that in, and there's studs that are going to fit into the recesses on the case. With that in, now I'm going to bring the anti-reverse dog in. Sometimes I need to do this with a pliers. Sometimes I can just kind of knock it in. Centering the hole for that. And then from underneath, come into that hole with your screw. Come on up through. And let's make a turn or 2 here to start locking that in place. Just like that. You can see. Now you'll notice that that hole is different from the others. As I mentioned, sometimes you have a small nut that also locks that in so that you don't lose that dog. In this case, either this reel, I'm going to assume this reel has been serviced several times in its lifetime. The reel's probably 30 years old. But somewhere along the line, I think somebody either lost the screw or whatever. It certainly wasn't in the case when we were working on that. Okay. I'm going to start tightening these down now. I wanted to get them started before I did that. So there's one more of these that needs to go. Very strong reel, simple in design, high quality materials, well made, construction. What can I say? It's one of my favorites. All right. All 4 of these are tightened down now. One final turn just to make sure. These things sometimes will shake loose from boat vibration, so you want to make sure you've got them torqued down. Nice. We have one thing to do on the back then. We need to put this anti-reverse dog spring back on. I like to put the one over the top first. Then I have a micro pliers that I generally use for this. You can probably do it with with your fingers if you're strong enough, but a micro pliers helps me set that. And then what we can do here is we can turn it and make sure that it's working. Another indication that there should be a nut on here is how high that screw comes out of the bridge plate. That would be to accommodate that screw. All right, we're walking backwards now. We have the 2 tension washers next. These are not flat washers. They have a belly to them. And I like to put the first one with the 2 outside wings facing up. And then I like to reverse that so that the 2 outside wings are facing down. And then this is the one that always, if you've been beating your reel up, this is the one that's kind of hard to do in terms of getting the star adjuster started. Sometimes you can get away with holding the middle. Yeah, we're clear enough there now. Okay, what you want to do for that then, to finish that, use the handle as a wrench once you can hold that, and then just bring it down the rest of the way. Now don't put the screw in yet, you still have that tension washer that goes here. Let's take our spool then. Go ahead and put grease on both sides of the spool's axle shaft. Seat the axle shaft into the bearing on this side, and then we can seat the top in. When I seat these, I like to put the spool into engage mode. That means free spool mode rather. Pull that in and away. It's easier than trying to deal with it otherwise. Now the 50H had knurled, if that's the right word, knurled case screws. That was so that you can back them out by hand. One of the changes in the 300H is that they've gone to straight tapered screws. Those 50H screws used to salt up as well. So there was some design improvements with this, but overall the reels are almost identical. They're certainly identical inside on the bridge side. All right, that's 2 down. We're doing the same thing we did with the other. We're kind of alternating sides as we put these back. That's because you want to keep the tension equal on all sides. Now we're just moments away from finishing up the last piece or two here and giving it a final test. And then Thomas can take this one fishing. And only good things can happen with this reel now. Hopefully he changes that line. The line looks new, but it's not. It's got memory in it. You can see it. That's one of the downfalls of heavier monofilament. And monofilament is relatively inexpensive, so you should change it every season. All right, this one is the tension washer. I mentioned that it kind of was put on backwards. The wings should be facing down. I guess there's no right or wrong way, but almost invariably this will be with the wings facing down. Walk that down. Let's go ahead and grab the handle. Took the handle off, it was in the low leverage side, so we'll put it in the low leverage side. And if you did not take that gear sleeve off, what you would want to do here is to add a drop of oil in there. Since we took that off and put the grease in, you do not need to put the oil in. What you do need to do is make sure that you start this screw square. Tighten it by hand as much as you can to get it started. That way you know that you're going in proper and you're not going to cross strip. And that's not set properly. So we'll back it out and do it again. Once you've got it started, go for your wrench and finish the tightening down. Those of you wondering, this is an Allen-Taney wrench. If you're looking for one, it's available through mysticparts.com. It's an aftermarket wrench for pen reel, and if you do a lot of work on pen reels, it's a lifesaver. And it's multi-purpose. It'll fit a Daiwa 350H as well. All right. Align the scallop with the tie down screws hole. That's the only part left in my parts tray. Go ahead and put that in. We'll tighten this down. We'll give it a test. While I'm doing that, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel, everybody involved in keeping us safe. Your efforts truly are appreciated. All right, we're tightened down. There's nothing left in the parts tray. We're in free spool. Let's see how it spins. You can cast this one a mile. Well, maybe not with the 40-pound test on it, but you put 20-pound test on this on a 10-foot rod, you can throw this over the second brake easily. There you go. All right, let's put it into gear. And that's a beautiful sound of the 350H. If you need to adjust your spool, you can bring the side spool adjuster in. This should just be the littlest of play side to side. That's the best way to run this reel. There you go. So that's the Daiwa 350H. It's how you take it apart, how to service it, and how to keep it fishing for a long time to come. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please stay tuned or stay watching for more. We don't tune anything anymore, but stay watching. And I appreciate you if you're still hanging around to see the end of the video. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day and great fishing.